Like, do you embrace the term yacht rock? Because that is kind of what's been bringing a lot of this music back this embrace of this music.
Well, I embrace the music. The concept of yacht rock is great for that reason. And a lot of people who remember that music, but also younger people who weren't really listening to radio then. I mean, it's a great way for them to get familiar with songs from the 70s and stuff like that. I do find it interesting, though, that on Facebook, they'll have these ongoing arguments about that song's not yacht rock. What do you mean it's not yacht rock? It's ba ba ba. It's like, I'm not a real big genre guy. I mean, Firefall was considered to be country rock for a long time, and we're not really country rock, although we came out of that Byrds, Buffalo Springfield, Poco, Graham Parsons kind of thing that was kind of country rock, but we did something different to it in Boulder, Colorado. And I remember back in the 70s, some people, started trying to find out what Firefall was, and they called us Colorado rock, which really came from Southern California.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny? It is. It's like an extension of what went on here in Laurel Canyon in the 70s.
Absolutely. Yeah. Laurel and Topanga Canyon.
Yeah.
There were so many bands then. It's interesting because pretty much every music lover knows about the migration to LA. Stephen Stills, Jim McGuinn, Richie Fury from New York, Joni Mitchell and Neil Young from Canada, Bernie Ledden, and a little bit later, Don Felder from Florida, Graham Parsons from Florida, Glenn Frey from Detroit, Don Henley from Texas, and all of those people pretty much, I mean, the Byrds invented folk rock, taking folk music and adding electric and 12-string guitars. And the Byrds' first album was one of the best American albums ever, I think. And then a few years later, not only Poco, but Graham Parsons and Rick Nelson and Mike Nesmith from the Monkees, they started inventing country rock, And the thing that a lot of people don't know about, everybody knows about the migration to LA, but after Stills and Joe Walsh and all those people were really big stars a few years later, after having invented this new music, many of them moved to the mountains above Boulder, Colorado. Stephen Stills, Chris Hillman, Richie Fury, Joe Walsh, Dan Fogelberg, Carl Wilson from the Beach Boys. Everybody kind of came into the mountains of Boulder, where I went to college and was from. And Caribou Ranch was there, the Caribou Studios, and 30 miles south of Boulder was Red Rocks. And suddenly Boulder became the center of music. And that's where Firefall got together in that whole kind of thing. And when we were playing our first, gigs, trying to figure out what we sounded like and to get good at what we did live before we got a record contract, on any given night at a place called the Good Earth we played at, Dan Fogelberg would come and sit in, or Stephen Stills would come and sit in, or Chris Hillman, who Rick Roberts used to be with in the Flying Burrito Brothers, and we were good friends with. And, the intertwining nature of that Southern California thing that then kind of migrated some to Boulder, that, so many bands played with each other and members would play on other people's albums. And this was a girlfriend then they changed boyfriends. And I mean, it's just like unbelievable, that whole great thing of the 60s and 70s music.